is in Final Destination, the original Final Destination. The original movie, they play Rocky Mountain High because the movie is about a group of teens that survive a plane crash, a plane explosion. Rocky Mountain High plays, and one of the characters, I think, it was either Ali Larder or Devin Sawa, who says, John Denver, he died in a plane crash. And it's like this very like obvious like line thing. It was ridiculous line delivery.
Par for the course for that movie.
Yes, but...
It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Now, a running gag on this show that we've kind of had, or at least some recurring, sort of recurring thing, I think it started really with Logan Lucky, was when Dominic and I reviewed it back in August. And Joe, I know you did see the film as well before you were co-hosting.
Yes.
We brought up the fact that like John Denver has been in quite a few movies. His music and his likeness has been in quite a few movies. It started back in May with Alien Covenant when the song Take Me Home Country Roads, which is the song that's most prominently used in all these movies that we're about to mention. Then it came in Okja, the Netflix film, which was very good. That had that song, Annie's Song, had a very interesting scene. It was also in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul, which I completely missed. I saw the movie, but I completely forgot until afterwards that it had John Denver in there.
Everyone missed that movie.
You know what's funny? It is the best Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie that they've made thus far. I will go as far as to say that. Not recommending it. It's very faint praise. I think it's the best Diary
really
of a Wimpy Kid.
saying much when it comes to Diary of a Wimpy
No, because
Kid,
they're
though.
awful. They're awful, putrid movies. But then John Denver popped up in Logan Lucky, and then again in Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and let's not forget Free Fire, the Ben Wheatley movie. What in the world is going on here? I told you, thrice is a coincidence, 4 times is a conspiracy. And it turns out a day or two after we talked about on air Kingsman, and we brought up John Denver's big presence in the film. Yahoo Movies published an article written by Ethan Alter called Why John Denver Music is Seemingly in Every Movie These Days. And I could not think of that as a more timely thing to include in an article.
And just a little bit more background. Is featured in Kingsman too in a very important scene. Matthew Vaughn said, "I can probably assume this for all the other directors or writers who included all these songs as well, John Denver songs." Matthew Vaughn has explicitly stated, "I had no idea that this was going to become a thing. I wrote this movie 2.5 years ago, so 2.5 years before 2017. So that would place it around 2014, 2015, 2014. And it's like, I didn't know this was going to be a thing. I just liked John Denver, and I included it in here.
And it was way before this was ever meant to ever believed to be anything special, which was pretty crazy when you think about that. But anyway, though, according to Alter's article, though, he says coincidental timing is one obvious explanation for the sudden ubiquity of Denver's music in major motion pictures. But according management, who oversees John Denver's estate and his music and all his properties. Denver, of course, died in a plane crash in 1997, tragically. His business manager oversaw the licensing for the recordings in many years, but in 2010, Brian Schwartz, and his business partner, they were brought on board by the singer's 3 children to try and incorporate his music, sort of like the estate finally granted the explicit permission for Denver's music to be incorporated into film. And that is one of the reasons why his music is now turning up in everything. And it really isn't turning up. It's major plot points, which I think is the best part, like Dominic, you were just saying.
And in quote from the article here, Brian Schwartz, who is the estate manager, I believe, or handler, Schwartz points to a 2014 decision to transition the estate, John Denver's estate's U.S. publishing partners from BMG to Cobalt as one such seed that actively flowered in 2017. So Matthew Vaughn said he wrote the film 2.5 years ago, from 2017, 2.5 years ago. So that places in 2014 when he started writing it. Naturally, the estate was moved in 2014, so the rights were released or opened up at this time. So then when Matthew Vaughn was most likely, I'm inferring at this point, but when Matthew Vaughn was writing this, he's like, I like John Denver. oh, hey, we have the rights, or the rights are available. Let's include it in the movie. And at that point, 5 other directors for these 5 other films all thought the same thing at the same time.
Steven Soderbergh, the director of Long Haul, you know what I mean? So many others. And the director of Okja, Bong Joon-ho came out and said too that the reason he incorporated Annie's song in the film Okja is just because he said, my brother was a very big fan of the song, and when I was editing the movie and I had to edit that sequence, he said that song came to me, and he's like, I threw it in there, I cut it together, and I watched it, and he said, I thought it was beautiful.
It's a great song.
It's a great scene too. I know you haven't seen Okja. Am I correct? You haven't seen it? Joe, have you seen Okja?
No, I've not seen Okja.
That's a good film. It's on Netflix right now. Highly recommend it. That's another one. Don't be surprised if it sneaks in a few Oscar nominations. I think it does have the very big potential to kind of launch Netflix to have a Oscar campaign. I really do think that.
Emmys, yes, but not Oscars yet, have they?
They have not. No,
that's huge.
They tried with
that's massive.
Beast of No Nation.
Beast of No Nation was
Idris
supposed to.
Elba.
A lot of people were surprised that that one did not get a nomination. That was the one a lot of people were going to incorporate too, but. I like John Denver's music. Big fan of it. I'm hoping that a lot of other songs like Sunshine on My Shoulders, Rocky Mountain High, Calypso I love. That's another great. That's probably my second behind Rocky Mountain High. I like Country Roads, but Country Roads also, as you could tell from this year, gets a lot of play. So I don't care. I love it. I love Rocky Mountain High will always be my favorite though. John Denver. Joe, what's your favorite John Denver song?
Country Road.
Country Road, and it's a great song too. And I mean, it's also mentioned in this article too by Alter. Is he says this year is also it's the 20th anniversary of Denver's death, and it's also the 40th anniversary of the movie Oh God, which was a box office hit in 1977. It had George Burns, who was also in the original. I don't know if either of you gentlemen saw it. He was in the original film, but not the remake this year. He was in the original Going in Style, directed by Martin Brest, which was remade by Zach Braff this year. He was in the original George Burns, and he was also in the film with John Denver, Oh God, which I'd like to watch now that I know that it's the 40th anniversary of that film. Oh God, indeed. I'd like to go back and watch that. I'd like to really go back and see that though. But I think the funniest part though is that, like I've said before, is that it's not only that John Denver's music is making an appearance in these movies. It'd be one thing if like his music was like a montage thing, but the fact that it is like turning up in like Logan Lucky, it's a big plot point with Channing Tatum and his daughter Farrah McKenzie. It's a big plot point, and it's also a big plot point. It's a big point of significance too, thematically in Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
I was gonna say in Alien Covenant, it's the whole reason why they go to that planet, because they think they'll discover human life there because they're hearing Country Road.
Indeed, and I love the fact that it's not just thrown in there; it's actually incorporated very smoothly. You know what I mean? Which is very important. I think in this. So if the estate's doing this, for like part publicity reasons for John Denver, obviously for the the royalties and stuff inevitably that come for it, we can't deny that. We can't deny that artists get substantially more popular once their music dies. Big rest in peace this week too to Tom Petty, who died yesterday. It was a very confusing circumstance too, the way he died. It was announced that the LAPD announced that he passed away after being unconscious in his home in the afternoon, and then it was retracted. He was on life support, quote unquote, fighting for his life, and then he passed away right around midnight over here this yesterday or so. So big rest in peace to Tom Petty too.
Tom Petty, similar to John Denver, Tom Petty is one of those artists who you don't realize is like, oh yeah, that song. Oh yeah, that song. Oh, that song. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And now that he's passed away, we're gonna get a flood of, appropriately, we're gonna get a flood of, Tom Petty songs playing through the air, coming up again. And it's like, I really think a lot of people are gonna realize, similar to when they played the Super Bowl, and when the Heartbreakers played the Super Bowl, same thing happens. Like, oh yeah, that song. People are gonna be doing that. Same as I have been doing with John Denver, whose songs I partially grew up with. Because I got a lot of that 70s folk singer. I was more partial to Carole King. But
Carole King, yes.
John Denver, so many songs, so many great songs there. And the fact that John Denver is being used in critical plot points of various movies just goes to show how much brevity and how much long-lasting impact and beautiful poetry his music has. I should mention, actually, Country Roads was written for him by two prominent songwriters.
Yeah, that he did not write that. A lot of people think that he wrote that. He wrote a lot of his songs, but he didn't write that one. Yeah, but he was handed down a lot of music.
But John Denver is the poet laureate, which is a very esteemed position. You don't think of this position, but he is the poet laureate of the state of Colorado, and rightfully so.
Yeah, this guy, you could tell Dominic over here drinks tea on Sunday afternoon. You know,
seriously, it's one of those pretentious, things that people are just given an honorary thing for. But it's a high honor to be given.
Oh, absolutely, well deserved.
It's a classy title. I can only dream of being called a poet laureate in my day.
Yeah, no kidding.
John Denver rightfully earns that title.
I settle for people saying, "Yeah, I read your review. It was decent." I settle for that. The last thing I'll mention is 2 inclusions of John Denver's music in 2 different respective movies, very different movies. The one I wish I can quote it fully on air, but I can't. Is from the 1994 comedy Dumb and Dumber. Do you guys remember that inclusion of John Denver in that film?
I don't.
See, that was a great scene. It's actually I actually would bill it as the funniest thing in Dumb and Dumber, and I like Dumb and Dumber. It's a pretty good movie. I don't think the original. I don't think the first 40 minutes are better than the last 50 in my opinion. But the thing is, I love the line late in the movie is when they're driving through what they think is Colorado, but it's actually Nebraska. I think it's Nebraska, and they're driving through it, and it's all flat lands, and Jeff Daniels says, "Hey, aren't there supposed to be mountains in Colorado?" And Jim Carrey goes, edit it. Jim Carrey goes, "No, yeah. That John Denver was full of crap, man." And that's the line in that movie, and I love it. I think it's so brilliantly executed. And they even said, too, in the article that John got a kick out of that line. He thought that was hilarious. And the other inclusion, too, and I mentioned this last week or two when we talked about Kingsman, is in Final Destination, the original Final Destination. The original movie, they play Rocky Mountain High because the movie is about a group of teens that survive a plane crash, a plane explosion. Rocky Mountain High plays, and one of the characters, I think it was either Ali Larder or Devon Sawa, who says, "John Denver, he died in a plane crash." And it's this very obvious line thing. It was ridiculous line delivery.
Par for the course for that movie.
Yes, but that was actually where I found out about the song Rocky Mountain High, because I watched Final Destination way younger than I should have been. Cool, ballad too, very descriptive. That's the other thing too with Denver, and I think you guys would agree with this too, is that there's a lot of so much vocal poetry and vivid beauty in his music that is so underrated, I think, in a lot of respects.
So now the big question is, what movie you think is gonna have John Denver in it next?
Oh, if you would have told me this list of movies from Diary of a Wimpy Kid to Okja to Logan Lucky, I wouldn't have been able to guess. But I mean, now we gotta take bets on what's gonna include.
What's releasing? What's releasing?
Like I said, there's quite a few things coming up now. At this point, I would not be surprised if John Denver's in Boo to a Medea Halloween. I would not be surprised in the slightest.
I actually think he might make an appearance in 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri.
That's a chance. That's a chance. I mean, that might not be too far out of the picture. I could see with the tone of that movie, if you've seen the trailers, it could be used in an ironic sense.
And maybe if the Mountain Between Us wants to be really cheesy about it, they could play Rocky Mountain High.
And which one?
I don't think that sets the tone properly.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think. You know what? I hope that a movie uses it again in an ironic sense. I would not complain. It would probably be the best moment in both of these movies. I do not have high expectations for these movies, to be honest. But if maybe the remake of Death Wish or Justice League incorporated John Denver in some way, it would be at least... Don't tell me this. If you heard tomorrow that John Denver's song or likeness was going to make an appearance in the Death Wish remake, which we haven't talked about on air, but which we might get into later on another show, or Justice League. If you heard tomorrow on the internet that, hey, John Denver's song's in one of those 2 movies, would you not be at least a little bit more interested in one of those 2 movies, which I think have no interest at all with me?
I would probably say the Justice League one. That's obviously Joss Whedon working in that.
Oh, I think so. I really think so.
If that were actually be the case.
I would love to see it in that Death Wish remake, too, because there's nothing else besides man-cow voiceover in that movie that really draws any kind of interest whatsoever. You are listening to Sleepless with Steve for the...